Okay, back with another video about why you should all stop doing this to me. We're at a point now where dealing with the same B arguments, which is she feels like she has to work, and instead of trying to figure out why that's happening to her, she just keeps coming over to my reality and adding the part where I have to do some task in order to make her feel satisfied, even though the task is pointless and has nothing to do with real life or what's causing her problems. She's one of those kids that when she gets grounded, she wants to make sure that everybody else is also being punished, even if they weren't really doing anything or she was the one in the lead. Just because she thinks that by keeping life fair is making sure that everybody has the same amount of restrictions as her, rather than everybody having their leveled and graduated restrictions based on what they're doing to the environment. This is when she starts mother superior, acting like she's God, acting like she has great logical and ethical judgment that there's nothing we can do about. This is when things don't make sense because she's getting what she wants, and whenever she's not getting what she wants, she says things don't make sense, and that's why she's being violent, both logically, socially, sexually, and physically. So, yeah. So what's occurring here is really good description of what's going on. So here we have what I consider to be happening right now at all times. The shared physical moment, the shared moment. And what the shared physical moment is a result of every single person's, and I only have 4 people represented here, every single person's logical and tangible track meeting to a single point that they all share. And the what I've been measuring is how this occurs, and what actually happens based on the group. Now we can assume here that without interference, that the basic condition that combines them all into a single place is what really needs to be respected in order for physical occurrence to happen. And so if any of them get to this point and want something small to happen, but it isn't necessarily providing anything of immediate value, let's say this: the closer that you are to the occurring moment represents the time range that you have to justify what you want to happen. If you start justifying it back here, then you have all this time to make it make sense. If you start trying to justify it here, you have to make it make sense within that time, or else it won't physically happen. Now, you might ask, well, if the right now is always happening, is always what's occurring, then how come we don't still have time? Well, it's because the structure is flawed and is a limitation of what's actually occurring. It's the let's say a concept here was restricted for their behavior, and so went on to rationalize that all concepts were like them and needed to accept their poison. And we've seen this expressed several times. The idea that everyone needs to accept some sort of curse in order to exist. What that really is a concept that reached its limitation due to its relationship with life, trapping everything else via its own attempt to rationalize. And there was some insanity here. There was also some lack of ability to confirm outside a radius, and that lack of ability to confirm outside a radius actually gave them a bit of a, how do I say this, immunity to not getting what they want, simply because at this point they genuinely lacked the knowledge or understanding to know what was happening to them and why it was occurring. And so it made more sense to rationalize that every other concept was like them and thus needed to accept their poison. And what occurred is, because this was how much space that was left, when they addressed this, when they stated this to the whole shared concept as a whole, we did not have enough time to explain. And so it acted and held on to whatever physiological status it asserted there. However, because the moment is always occurring, from this point, it expanded to being here, and thus I was allowed to fully explain what was happening to change this moment. Now, outside of all that, if you're confused here, It's because you're at a collision with your own concept and don't want to accept it, so need to find some sort of logical gate you can use to keep yourself from being restricted or knowingly punished because you're now aware and want to keep going. And so refuse to really accept it, which is what B does here. Whenever B's caught and the only outcome is that she's been the bad guy this whole time, she refuses to accept anything. Nothing makes sense. Because once again, she's playing win, lose. She's playing win, lose. And she never wants to be on the loss. So, if at any point the only reality that she can accept, and this applies to way more people than B, is that she's in the wrong and her concept needs to be disoccurred for a little bit so that other valid concepts can get what they need, she'll say that nothing makes sense and use this strategy here to assert that we need to explain it within this time range because she's going to act here and assert a new physiological instances that she can repeat and reverberate until her physical occurrence has illogical mass that requires violence, which she'll say that we're all being animals in the process in order to get rid of. Now, the reason I want to show you this structure is to explain what's going on. So, here, everyone shares a track. This is all their logical reasoning, all of their navigation with the environment. As they act onto reality, reality acts onto them and they have to respond to it. Now, everyone's sharing one point and thus has to make an argument within this range to get what they want at this moment. Now here, if they state here, they can argue to make what they want occur before this point. But at this point, when they don't like something, they have to argue to make it occur within this. And within this, we're reset back to, actually I can just draw it here. Basic social and ethical orientation. Now, because this moment is always set back to basic and ethical orientation, which is a rule that was established by the realization that all things happening need to be genuinely fair in order to be a good product of existence, or else we all down spiral into chaos and misery that cannot be solved without all of us just accepting suicide is a valid conceptual answer. What I meant to say was all of us accepting, like I said, a poison. The issue I have with that statement there is that these guys will often refuse to accept that they're wrong and will cause disturbances that change everyone else, and then everyone else is forced to accept the poison anyway. That's really why I want to isolate these people and do my thing without you guys judging me for it. So here's what's happening. Because in this moment, the argument is everything needs to be good, everything needs to make sense without a long-term explanation of track. This is the way things look, the way things seems moment. What happens is, let's say this person's arguing with this person, and this person's valid. This person's making a lot of sense, and this person isn't wrong. And at this point, they're bound to get what they want. This one's gonna be disoccurred, and this one's gonna get what they want. And so what this person does, they start adding values. They start creating bridges and saying, well, he's this, and he does this, and that's who he is, and that's what he does. And they refuse to let off physical instances cause changes to this person's character, and by the time that they get to this point, even though this is what caused all of it, this effort here that altered this person's track, the moment appears to be that this person is in the wrong and this person is the one who should occur. Now notice how I'm being broken at the point that I'm making very valid arguments. I want you guys to pay attention to that. It's happening in real time, by the way. And so that's what happened to me, whether you accept it or not. I'm at that point where I'm absolutely fucking in complete control of a concept that justifies everything. And if you resist me here, I'm straight up just going for you dying. I have this. I've tried for too long to make you do it in a reasonable way. And you had no reason to stop me. So here, I'm gonna explain what's going on. So in this state, someone does this to me, causes a moment that now is always flash framed and displayed anytime I'm winning, anytime I'm the one who should occur. They take this moment and they flash it to everyone and they say, what is that? And that's why he shouldn't occur. Now, how this is caused? A, we're all imperfect. This is a conditional state. In this state, a condition is asserted that causes destabilization, that allows for frustration to occur, and thus insolidation of concept that can allow for room to malleate and change the course of action, even on a small, minute level. And this is all it takes for someone to attempt to grab something and miss it. That's a mistake. Now, in the state of someone making a mistake, a greater condition, a tighter condition can be applied that allows for even greater mistakes to be made. And at this point, we're not just dealing with physiological frustrations, we're dealing with ethical and moral and logical frustrations. And it's here that logic can be destroyed and a person's actions can really be limited to this point here, in which they just look bad and cannot avoid the immediate ethical basic orientation. And so, after getting some state that's often caused by this person not being willing to do that to anyone else and not knowing that that's a real thing a concept can take on in order to survive and get their moment, they're a victim of it. And what this concept does, once we explain, the initial reality is that person made a mistake, but that's not what happened. That person was manipulated by a concept's intention to change them. And we can say that in some way all concepts are participating, in this shared interference of each other's ability to accurately act onto the environment, just to keep up a pace of saying, well, in this moment, you're all wrong and I'm right. And so we can say that it goes in every direction. Now, ultimately, I can say that I'm innocent here just because I know for a fact that I am. And the only people I've ever attacked, I've done in self-defense. Not because I was wrong, but because they were doing this to me and I realized it and started doing it back. So, in this state, they say, explain why that happened. Now, without understanding this structure, the assertion is it was just a mistake. They say, oh, if it's just a mistake, it doesn't make sense for him to stop making mistakes. That just wouldn't be real life. Now, the only reason that logic seems to work is because it evades and dismisses the fact that this is happening. The fact that even in that moment where they say it doesn't make sense for him to stop making mistakes, that's what that is. That's them adding structure to disorient and destabilize another person's actions to cause inaccuracy that fumbles their occurrence. So, within this state of they're always going to be making mistakes, because that wouldn't make sense if they just made a mistake and then stopped now. But it does make sense if we know that the mistake was caused by their resistance of their occurrence. I did there, so you know who's who. Now, in this state, further frustration occurs, logical, social, sexual, and physical, until a person is so disoriented, so destabilized, that a new moment occurs that is then transported into this moment again, the basic orientation, and then is used as a flash image, pretty much in the conceptual race to occur. Anytime that this one sees that this one is the one who's about to occur, this one retrieves the image and presents it back in order to completely disturb and frustrate and disoccur this person. Which means that we're no longer occurring based on what makes sense. We're occurring based on flash images that were purposely developed as a strategy for destroying and disoccurring anyone who is more valid than these win-lose strategists who are causing these problems. Now, here I'm telling you, I'm not fucking faking. You guys need to really respect me here because I'm done. I'm killing people. I'm not gonna put my hands on anybody. You're not gonna be able to say how without admitting that this is right. But that's what's happening here. We're done. That's what you did. You dismissed that fact there, you're fucking dying. You wanna fucking change the definition of what I mean by dying? Be my fucking guest. But that's all you'll be here, is a fucking flesh carcass trying to fucking make itself seem like it's a real person anymore. I don't fucking love you guys.